Happy Friday and welcome to another edition of Techstrong Gang. I'm Jon Swartz in Silicon Valley. As we get ready for the holiday weekend, some things never change. NVIDIA earnings knocked it out of the park yet again, but with a caveat. The AI chipset market is about to explode, and Amazon and Accenture are doing their best to deliver responsible AI. Those topics and our star-studded panel is here to explain it all to you. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi there again, it's Jon Swartz, your intrepid Silicon Valley editor-reporter from the Techstrong Gang. September is almost upon us, and where did the summer go? Today we're going to explain some hot topics with even hotter takes from our panel, and let's introduce everyone. We're going to start on the West Coast, and we're going to travel down Highway 101, or is it 280, to my hometown of San Jose, and Lisa Martin, CMO advisor at the Ventura Group. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Jon and gang. Great to be with you guys on this Friday, holiday eve.
We cannot wait. Yes, next up, we're a little bit down the road from you is in Santa Clara, where we say hello to Futurum Group analyst Guy Currier. Good to have you, Guy.
Good to be here. And yeah, 3-day weekends just around the corner. You have my permission to go on your 3-day weekend right after this podcast.
Thank you so much. And in Charlotte, North Carolina, we have Hope Lynch, our DevOps expert, who joins us yet again. It's good to see you again, Hope. How are you doing?
Good to see you as well, and thank you. And I appreciate the kinder timing than my counterparts have on the West Coast today.
Oh, I got 2 cups of coffee. It's brutal. I know Lisa's working on her second.
Same.
Yes.
Yep.
I don't know about you, Guy, but it helps. Let's get started with our first topic. You know, what amounted to the biggest tech news of the week, NVIDIA announced its much ballyhooed results on Wednesday. First and foremost, it reported operating income of nearly $19 billion for the second quarter, which is basically up 174% from the year-ago quarter. Its GAAP operating margin, though, however, narrowed to 62%, which weighed down on the shares of some partners such as Dell and Supermicro. The larger concern, and what I kind of want to pivot to, is the return on investment. Specifically, investors want reassurance that cloud customers and other buyers of NVIDIA equipment are getting sufficient returns on their spending, enough to keep pouring money into AI hardware, which brings me to Hope. And kind of your thoughts, your overall summary of NVIDIA's results, specifically around AI spending and what we can glean from these results.
Mm-hmm. I think it has been, anyone who's looking at anything in technology hasn't missed the explosion around AI investment across the board. But the company that has captured the most attention, the most imagination, and right now looks like the most profit has been NVIDIA. Unprecedented capital flow into AI infrastructure, research, development. Their GPUs are now considered the gold standard for AI workloads. So they are the cutting edge for everything from cloud-based AI to research and machine learning, deep learning. So they are broadening out across all aspects of the market. But as you stated, so many concerns. So is it economically viable to continue to invest so heavily in these areas? Maybe not, because what is the actual ROI on that investment? Companies that are using technologies like generative AI are saying, yes, we are using it, but we're not quite sure how to quantify our return on that and the benefit that it's providing to our bottom line. What is the foundation of all of that? This work that NVIDIA and other companies like it are doing. So there are technical challenges. They've had some delays in some of the chipsets they wanted to release. Environmental impact with scaling AI infrastructure is a concern. No one really has a solid answer for that right now. But once you look at it, can growth continue indefinitely? A lot of people say no, but no one has an answer as to what that growth point will cap at.
I think it's something. I think we had an episode recently where we talked about. I I think NVIDIA had something like 92% of its market. Maybe that's number's too high. I don't know. I'll ask Guy about that. But
it's looking like 94% right now. We're going to talk about the recent study from my company, my and Lisa's company, Futurum Group. It's around 94% in 2023.
Okay. So there really there have been a few tiny fissures in the NVIDIA fortress. I was going to ask you, Guy, is based on what you said, what Hope said, and based on the results and also your report, do you see any slowdown soon in NVIDIA's growth, or does it just continue to maintain this 90+% dominance?
Well, I want to make it clear. So my report, actually, my colleagues, Mark Beatty and Stephen Dickens are authors of that report. First of all, I mean, I think it's fair to say, there has been no single brand as dominant in an area, in a wave as important as AI is now, or cloud was before, or PCs or mainframes. There really is no single company that has ever been this dominant. Even Intel in its heyday for x86 was not really this dominant. And economics would tell you that that's not sustainable, not in an open market. But NVIDIA is, I think, a prime example. It's somewhat Apple-like in the sense of all the pieces of it working together at a high level of execution. It's not just engineering and product development. It's software. It's solutions. It's partnerships. And that they can sustain. They have the capital. They have the pipeline. I mean, for every dollar that NVIDIA can recognize, there's probably I don't read the financial reports as much as I should, but there's probably $1 or $2 just waiting to be recognized once they can ship. Their biggest problem is the same big problem that the whole industry has, which is manufacturing and supply. As more of these fabs go online, that will alleviate. But the inevitable point that I think Hope is talking about is going to come. It's not whether, but when, which is the point at which everybody looks around and realizes that they have these sleds of GPUs that they haven't been utilizing, and maybe they don't even know how to utilize, and they're going to stop a little bit and wait. One of the things the study shows is how dominant in terms of on the buy side, the cloud providers are, the various cloud providers, that they are consuming what's something like 43 or 44% of all the GPUs produced. So I think that that's one of the reasons probably for the market's reaction, because NVIDIA saw one of its biggest drops in stock price after the announcement, despite beating estimates. I think that there's a general sense that at some point the shoe is going to drop. I like to say the truth always wins. It's not whether it wins, it's when it wins. That's the whole question. And so that's really the question right now with NVIDIA in particular, not for the market as a whole, which is showing robust signs of growth.
Yeah. Those are, I guess, even by their outsized expectations in terms of what was expected, they fell just a little bit short. So maybe hence that in ROI, and maybe some small nitpicks are what dropped the stock a little bit. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Guy made a great point about it's not if, it's when. Being out here in Silicon Valley, it's Wall Street, Silicon Valley this summer have really been questioning, can generative AI produce enough measurable benefits for organizations? But we know that the trend is the CapEx investments aren't slowing down. Guy mentioned in the Future Intelligence report, the majority of those buying are hyperscalers. And we also know that from NVIDIA's customer perspective, it's the mega cap companies, Mag 7s, it's Meta, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon.com,
right.
Tesla, that are the biggest consumers of this. So Hope brings up a great point about the ROI. I was on Schwab Network last month talking about it because investors want to see proof in the pudding. I also get to talk with a lot of companies who are using generative AI from a marketing perspective. What they're seeing, to Hope's point, isn't necessarily bottom line impact, a lot of productivity improvements, but I think it's a conundrum because we're kind of in early innings. So the sustainability factor, Guy brings up a great point. How sustainable is it? Will the shoe drop eventually? But I think what investors want to see out here in Silicon Valley and Wall Street is where are the measurable ROI impact? Where are the benefits to justify this continued trajectory that is up and to the right in terms of spend?
Yeah, I know Daniel Newman at Insurance Group has written quite a bit extensively. I know I've helped him or ghostwritten a couple of things for him where he talks about the early era of generative AI and the early winners and how we're going to go through 3 network effects till we finally reach consumers in a certain way. So in a sense, NVIDIA is going to benefit from that for the foreseeable future. I'll throw this out to the entire panel. Is there anyone or anything, and we're going to talk about this in the second segment, is there anything coming along the way that could make even a brief dent in what NVIDIA is doing in terms of dominating the news in this area?
Dominating the news is one thing.
Dominating the news, the markets, the mindset, everything.
Well, I'll start us off briefly. So I think that there are sort of 3 or 2.5 areas where NVIDIA's at least technical relevance and need are being somewhat muted. The first one is the obvious one, which is competitors. AMD has its Instinct line, Intel's come out with Gaudi, not to mention a fair amount of a pretty intense development by the hyperscalers themselves to provide alternatives. This is natural when supply is a problem and nobody wants to be as excellent in many ways as the NVIDIA experience is. Nobody wants to be stuck to a single vendor. So that's the obvious one. I think a less obvious one is the challenge from alternative ways to at least do the inference part of AI, which is in other words saying you can use CPUs for this. You can use x86 CPUs. You can use high core count x86 CPUs. You can use the natural high core count ARM CPUs being developed, like Graviton or Ampere and so forth. So an all CPU model is not impossible. So you don't necessarily have to stick to GPUs in order to deliver either training or inference of AI, and those are both potential ways to dent NVIDIA's share and dominance, while it will still grow nonetheless.
Yeah, and to add to that, there is an area of research that some companies are looking at, like Google with TPUs, Amazon with Graviton chips. So they are trying to understand how they can design to optimize very specific AI workloads so that you can have an advantage, maybe performance or energy efficiency or cost. This specialization, if it were to catch on, could make the market a bit more fragmented, and you could have more of a difference in what the AI solutions look like in the hardware configurations they require. Now, with that being said, I don't think NVIDIA is slow by any means. And as they see that, I think they are going to be probably better positioned than anyone to take advantage of it.
Well, that's a good way to end it, because we're going to segue into our next block, and we're going to talk about some of the contenders or pretenders, however you want to look at them, in kind of this overall view of the AI processor wars. And we'll be back with that segment in a moment after these messages. Welcome back to Techstrong Gang. It wasn't officially AI Chip Accelerator Week, but financial results from NVIDIA, 2 recent conferences, and a new research report would suggest otherwise. So first and foremost, NVIDIA dominated the news like it always does. But while it was doing that on Wednesday at nearby Stanford University, Intel and others were touting their competing AI accelerators. Intel's gearing up for a September product launch around Gaudi 3. We can talk more about that later. Meanwhile, at the VMware Explorer conference in Las Vegas, our Mike Vizard was very busy reporting on benchmarks that showed a 40% gain in NVIDIA Blackwell GPU performance. Broadcom added support for Gaudi 2 to the VMware platform. And then even IBM previewed the next generation of AI processors for the mainframe. On top of that came this intriguing report from the Futurum Group's research arm, Futurum Intelligence. Last week, it released an AI chipset market analysis and study, providing a 5-year market forecast. That's what brings us to Guy. And maybe we could talk a little bit about the reports, where the market is headed, and what this means in the larger narrative for NVIDIA and everyone else.
Well, intriguing is right. Some of the results just put numbers on what we already know, like 30% annual growth of the market. But to say that in 2023, Futurum Intelligence measures the AI-related chipset market at $38 billion. So that would have been last year. But by 2028, $138 billion. That's what 30% growth means. We could break that down a little bit. 3/4 of that is GPUs. So not all of it is GPUs. Not all of the chipsets being bought for AI are GPUs. Around 20% are CPUs, and then 5% or so specialty. I like to think of it also just in terms of the data center market as a whole. 38 billion, put it in context, that's about 10% of data center spending. I mean, that's a lot. That was 2023. With that strong growth, growing faster than the data center market, by 2028, instead of being a tenth of the market, a fifth of spending on data centers will be for AI-related chipsets. I mean, that's kind of remarkable. One of the things that we've talked about on this show before is that AI itself is not really, an application. You don't really have AI applications. AI is a service provided to an application, even a chat. That is, you with an AI, that's a chat application that happens to have AI as its foundational service. What's the implication of that? That AI can go into everything and anything. And so when you look at it that way, you're seeing that a lot of what you might call the chipset resource, the processing resource of a data center, increasingly is going towards AI-related functionality, wherever the application is or whatever it is. And this report highlights that pretty well.
Lisa, I know you dug into this. Is there anything that jumped out at you in particular, or kind of you see as a trend or something that's going to lift to the surface soon?
A couple of things struck me from this Futurum Intelligence report. One was, Guy mentioned this in the last segment, that the over 40, I think it's 43% spend is coming from the hyperscalers themselves. So we know that the demand has got to be there. But there's some interesting competitors in this space. Grok with a Q being one of them, Cerebras as well. In fact, Grok, both of those were mentioned by NVIDIA in the earnings yesterday. And Grok, yes. It was funny. They flew under the radar. I sat down with their CEO last fall, about 8 months or so ago, and one of the kind of biggest newsworthy stories at the time was how he sent a kind of a cease and desist letter to Elon Musk because of XAI's Grok with a K. Fast forward this summer, they've just received $640 million in funding. They're valued at $2.8 billion. So the competition is heating up. NVIDIA is aware of it. And I'm interested in some of those smaller players as to what they're doing in that TPU space as well. But to Guy's point, it's not, the report's demonstrating the investment in GPU isn't necessary to run these workloads. CPUs are sufficient. I suppose it will depend on the use case. But looking at 18 different chip makers, it's an interesting market. NVIDIA clearly has a moat, but there's competition, which I think is good. I think society will benefit from that competition.
What about you, Hope? Any thoughts on this? Also, I want to ask you too, if you could assess, we referenced them earlier, the prospects of like a Gaudi 3 or any what IBM is up to, or even Broadcom. I mean, is there any traction there? I guess I'm trying to be diplomatic about it. So that's
I I think I think traction is relative with the outsized numbers we're seeing from NVIDIA right now. But companies like Broadcom, yes. So they're moving forward. They're trying to figure out how they can have AI accelerators in VMware's cloud infrastructure so they can integrate those AI processing capabilities into much broader IT environments. That then enables other industries, even because we think about automobile manufacturers, AI in healthcare. There will be AI touching probably every device and every capability we can think of in even more ways than we have now. So those integrations, let them leverage this advanced AI hardware and not hopefully eventually have to have completely new systems. So the way VMware has been looking at it, upgrade your existing VMware-based infrastructure with the AI capabilities. AI adoption is more accessible and cost-effective. Now you have a huge multiplier for those industries and companies that want to take advantage of it. If VMware is able to make something like that work, it will be revolutionary for them. And not knowing what their results might look like, but it will give them a very good foothold.
I think it's worth, when you think about NVIDIA's relevance, I think a lot of it hinges on CUDA, the software development platform. CUDA and solutions is what I would say are the strengths of NVIDIA. CUDA is well known. It's well enabled in the developer community and the data science community. Everyone tries to emulate or fit in with it. It's a de facto standard, even though it's proprietary. Intel is famously helpful and supportive of adoption through software, but I'm not sure that Gaudi has really shown, the Gaudi software suite has shown any particular strength there yet. AMD has ROCm, CUDA compatible. So Hope, I turn to you with wondering your perspective on these things. Like, the idea is that a CUDA developer could use ROCm or could use the Gaudi suite without a whole lot of need to ship thinking and even port code, like that sort of thing has similar frameworks. I think that's a key enabler, though, and there's a lot of stiction on CUDA, and that keeps people on NVIDIA. What do you think?
I think you're right. Having, let's say, when everything's really started heating up around generative AI, I was curious. So I signed up for the developer program at NVIDIA to see, what do they offer? What tools do they have? And let me tell you, they roll out the red carpet. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But I think the point we are at right now does remind me of stages we've been at with software development and other technologies. In the beginning, it is so siloed and so specialized by the manufacturer. It is so proprietary that it is harder to shift from one to the other because you are learning so many things over again. I think that's the point where we are now. So if you really understand how to develop with NVIDIA software, if you really understand their GPUs, fantastic. But now someone wants you to shift to a different technology. You have a steep learning curve. I think that will take some time to smooth out. But each of those vendors is providing, I would say, a pretty good experience, good tool sets, and a good community. But again, NVIDIA is definitely leading the way.
Can I just jump back to something that you just said, Hope, is interesting, and it kind of parallels what Guy, I believe, mentioned earlier when he discussed Apple and NVIDIA. And Guy, maybe I'm kind of going far astray because I used to cover Apple quite a bit, and I see the same type of market reaction and kind of consumer or not enterprise reaction to NVIDIA that I saw to Apple, and that has a lot of staying power. I'm just wondering, is that kind of if you can maybe elaborate on what you said earlier about Apple and NVIDIA and how they kind of are in the same spot and hence their success.
Well, I don't have any insider information there. It's just apparent from the outside.
That's what I meant, right?
Yeah, Apple's famously successful by being run and really controlled by a product manager, Steve Jobs. Everything flowed out from a very tight product management discipline. They're also famous for being functionally organized instead of product line organized. And that I think is it's very difficult to pull off. NVIDIA is not organized that way. But what it does is it allows for this kind of spirit and practice of product management in one area, sometimes called silo, but product management in one area, marketing in another area, sales in another area, solutions in a third, and so forth. What NVIDIA is doing without that kind of structure, though, is very similar, which is really executing at a high level, not just in each one of those functional areas, but in terms of all of them working together, so that there's no like chink or hitch in an adopter and user's journey where they suddenly realize, oh, I got to do this other thing that I don't want to do. Everything gets enabled. Hope's description of the developer experience is a perfect example of it. NVIDIA is a chip maker. They're a chip maker, okay? But your experience of them is through the software that you develop and use. They understand that. I don't know if that is well enough appreciated around the industry. It's a secret of NVIDIA's success, and that was a secret of Apple's success as well.
Yeah, that was interesting. When Steve Jobs came back, it was 1996. Technically, they bought Next in 1996. Or Apple did.
Apple bought Next.
Is that right? That was December 1996. It happened late after the B acquisition fell through. This is like ancient history. But one of the first things when Jobs eventually became the CEO, and that was fairly quick, was he streamlined and stripped out. They had like 80 variations of the Macintosh. You had a Performa. I don't know if you remember those. All these different yes, we're going to go down to a quadrants. We're going to go down to like 4 basic products. That's it. Yep. We're going to simplify everything. So, that's a different time. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw it out.
I do want to mention one thing from the just to get back to the research report. I hope you talked about generative AI a few times. That has gotten so much attention. But one of the really fascinating results that was just like, I read it and I was like, oh my God, that is so true. And I've been forgetting it all along. The number one AI application in 2023, not generative AI, visual and audio analytics. Number 2, simulation and modeling. Generative AI is one of the, not the fastest actually, but one of the fastest growing. But despite all the attention it gets, it is not what predominantly this hardware is being used for right now. It's being used simulation and modeling, but above that, visual or audio analytics is the top use of all of these chipsets in AI today.
On that note, we're going to go talk about something complete. Well, it's another AI episode topic. I mean, what else do we have? AI. We're going to talk about responsible AI when we get back in a few moments.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Welcome back to Techstrong Gang. Accenture and Amazon Web Services just launched something called the Accenture Responsible AI Platform powered by AWS. That is a mouthful.
What a great name.
Oh my God. It rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Jesus. Anyway, its mission is to help organizations automate and operationalize responsible AI practices. I know next to nothing about these types of things. That's why I'm so happy that Lisa is here, as well as Hope and Guy, to explain to us what this means and why it is so important. And that's something I need to learn about. So Lisa, I hand the baton to you.
Sure. So I get asked all the time. I post about this on X and LinkedIn and Instagram. Explainable AI, responsible AI. And people say, come to me as a marketing person. Is that a marketing term? It's really not. We're seeing this now platform approach from Accenture and AWS. But really, it's been for a while a framework or an approach that organizations can take to kind of help guide the design, the development, the deployment of AI, aiming to build trust in AI solutions. Trust is currency these days. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It absolutely is. And it needs to invoke responsible AI transparency, accountability, explainability, fairness. And so while it's not a marketing term, it's an approach or a process that's kind of, I think, emerging within the context of AI. But I think there's a lot of areas in which marketing can help on the transparency side, the accountability side, the explainability side. And some of that comes back to the basic piece of marketing, and that's positioning. But it's interesting, this platform approach that's being taken. We know that both Accenture and AWS have thousands, if not more, generative AI projects within their customer base. And I applaud what they're doing to kind of take more of a platform approach to the responsible AI framework.
Okay. It's like, in a sense, does the platform help an organization assess AI risks and develop mitigation strategies to comply with regulations? Because over and over again, I keep coming across these types of themes: compliance, the cost, the unintended consequences. And this all kind of plays into this idea that it's going to start in California and it's probably going to eventually go to other states. This idea of holding these companies accountable to how they use AI and the unintended consequences of the use.
I think it's critical for companies to especially invest in transparency and explainability. So if, let's say, a finance company is sued because someone says, we've been analyzing the patterns and you are denying funding more for certain type of companies than others. We think there's bias at play. Now, if they have not invested in explainability and some way to make those decision-making processes and models transparent, they may not have much of a leg to stand on. But if they have invested in that, now they know that they can produce accurate outcomes, they can provide the explanations for those outcomes. Then how the AI arrived at the decision is a lot clearer, and they can have some way to push back or at least maybe tune those models, right? So that they are fair.
Yeah, I mean, it always comes back to me in this kind of haste or rush to adopt AI and to spread it throughout an organization. What ends up happening is a lot of these companies, there's a lot of angst, I guess is the word, or miscommunication or disconnects on the intended use versus the actual use. It always kind of comes back to this idea that at the C-suite, they want a plan, they want something within a company, but we'll attend to the mess when it happens later, right?
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Sorry, Guy. The stakeholder engagement just kind of pinged in my mind with what you just said, Jon. And I think that's where I look at this from a marketing lens, and what can CMOs do to facilitate the transparency, the explainability, the accountability. I think marketing teams can help engage with stakeholders. And we're talking the board, investors, analysts, press, customers, and kind of the broader community to ensure that the AI products and services that these companies are developing are done so and developed appropriately and marketed as such. Marketing can also come in and help from a responsible communication perspective, ensuring that how they're marketing these AI products and services are transparent, avoiding exaggerated claims or miscommunication. So I think that communication piece around this is key, and it has to be responsible.
I think that's right. I think that not only is it key, I think it may even be primary. I mean, I think I'm going to put my Mike Vizard cynic hat on right now since he's not leading this discussion, because I think that may even be the primary and most common goal in general across, especially the largest companies who are really investing in what responsible AI initiatives and so forth. I don't mean it's pure lipstick on a pig or anything like that, but when you think about, when I think about responsible AI, and I'd like to know your Hope's thoughts about this, I think it's really two things. It's sort of representation / protection on the one hand and transparency on the other. Mostly we talk about explainability, accountability, but also, and a key part of this Accenture platform with AWS is using guardrails to be able to ensure that protected data stays protected, that there aren't inappropriate uses, that sources are appropriately representative, and like all that sort of thing. And this is all terrific, and I think it's absolutely what needs to be done. But the customers I talk to, they are halfway between fear and ignorance. They just want to keep moving. That's the ignorance side. They see the benefits. It's a whole lot like security and cybersecurity. Until the lightning strikes, they just la 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 la. Everything's going great, but they have this fear in the back that lightning might strike. They might get accused. They might get their brand damaged and all that other sort of stuff. So explainability, responsible AI is a way out of this. The catch, in my mind, is that there really is no auditability here in the legal sense. These models just don't work that way. In the end, you cannot you can explain, and the explanations are great, but I think the legal framework we have around the world does not allow for something explainable to be legally defensible. And that's where I wonder, sort of where we're going in the end, is kind of nobody's going to sit there and go, well, it was trained, we use the right data and everything, it ain't our fault. Well, it is your fault in the end if you bought it or someone else trained it. So Hope, you're nodding. What do you think?
Yes. Because this ties back to an experience I had at a former large employer where we wanted to start capitalization of our AI projects. Instead of running a project 9 months later, we can start capitalizing because it's finished. Now we're going to start capitalization as it goes. We had to have a conversation with PricewaterhouseCoopers, because at that point, there were not clear rules written for capitalization of agile projects. Everything was capitalization waterfall. What it came down to, which I think will be similar for this, is due diligence. Did you document somewhere what you were planning to do? Did you do what you planned to do? How can you prove it, right? So now it looks sort of like a chain of trust has been built. One of the ways organizations can help with that is if they come up with or find a way to develop some sort of governance and accountability framework. So now they have a way to document the tools, the processes, how the AI systems were developed, deployed, monitored, what guidelines they used, what ethical guidelines they used. And then if they are audited, especially at the stage we are now, it's just, did you do what you said you were going to do in the guidelines that you said you were going to do it in? I think that's the best defense any organization could have at this point.
I just think the law isn't there yet, Hope. I could be wrong.
Right.
I don't think this winds up getting tested. Lisa, you talk to CEOs and CMOs about this sort of stuff.
Yep.
Is it similar to what Hope and I are talking about?
It is. It definitely is. I think where I'm seeing more of the AI implemented within organizations that I talk to, CEOs are leaning in, and the Delta Airlines CEO talked about how they're leaning into generative AI. This is back in December with how they really modified their Ask Delta chatbot. I talk with marketers all the time about how they're using it for things like content creation, message testing, A/B testing. Content creation really kind of is the primary use case right now. So what I don't hear from them is concerns about the guardrails. I think they're piloting projects. Now, we need those projects based on kind of our first segment today to start getting out of the pilot phases so we can start understanding, and investors can, where is the proof in the pudding, where is the ROI? But I think most folks right now are looking at it project by project, function by function phase. That's what I'm seeing. And the guardrail conversations haven't come up yet. But you bring up a great point, Guy, that that's probably something that needs to be next in terms of assessing how they're using it. Are they using it appropriately? Because every organization, we know that this is a strong data foundation is essential for AI governance, for responsible AI. Every organization, including marketing, everything that CEO owns, needs to be able to demonstrate the data that they're using. Where is it coming from? Where is it being stored? How it's being used? And that's part of this whole responsible AI, I think, framework that has to be there. And I think it's a little, I wouldn't say cart before the horse. I just think we're not focused on that as much as we should be. And maybe the timing is becoming apparent now.
So, Guy, you mentioned Mike Vizard and his cynicism. This is where his part comes in. So I actually came across some research from RAND Corporation as a global policy think tank, and they concluded that over 80% of these AI next big thing projects are going to fail, which is twice the failure rate for non-tech related startups. And again, what Lisa had said, it usually comes down to a misalignment of goals between the key stakeholders. So leadership has this view of what AI can or should achieve that's not really grounded in reality. And instead, it's driven by this kind of preconceived notion of what AI is. And then it gets down to the rank and file where there's not enough upskilling or reskilling. There are people scrambling to strategize, including the poor engineers who are kind of stuck in the middle. So that's just a word of caution or a word of warning that we're going to see this huge gold rush, land rush. And there are going to be a lot of people who are going to end up being bankrupt or not going to find a kernel of gold anywhere.
I don't know about bankrupt. The implementers of this, the ones who are obeying the corporate masters and just going, they know when there's a wind at their back, they sail. And I think that an 80% failure rate, especially, post-agile, post-DevOps, beta release, MVP, all that world that we're in right now, 80% failure rate is not seen as failure. 80% failure rate is this didn't work, we learned, we're continuing. I kind of shrug and just 80%, okay, great. It's early days. The 20% is going to be amazeballs.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say 20% is actually a pretty high percentage, right? When you think about starting a business of any type, that's a high percentage. I mean, compared to other industries like the restaurant industry or what have you. So yeah, it's interesting. It's wise to kind of flip that number around. Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. It's things are continuing to move along. I mean, we're seeing no end in sight or slowdown. And what's going on is, as you alluded to in the Futurum analysis, I mean, we're going to have 5 years of super strong growth at the very least. So we shall see. But on that note, we're going to wrap up our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. And please stay tuned to Techstrong TV for a daily deluge of news on AI, security, DevOps, cloud, what have you. Thanks to our panel. You were all great. And I want to wish everyone a happy, great holiday weekend. Take care.
Yeah, great long weekend, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.